Hello, my name is Marnie, and I'd like to welcome you to Frankston City Library's FrankTALK with best-selling author Pip Drysdale. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which Frankston City Libraries operates, the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and future. I'd also like to extend that acknowledgement to the elders of any other communities who may be joining us today. Now, Pip Drysdale is a writer, she's a musician and an actor who grew up in Africa and Australia. Her debut novel, The Sunday Girl, was a bestseller, and as was her second novel, The Strangers We Know. The Paris Affair is Pip's dark and sexy new thriller. Pip, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I've got to say, I found it really, really difficult to put this book down, but as a dating single woman, it kind of scared the crap out of me, as do your others in a way, around that. Where did the Paris Affair story start for you?
Oh, I don't know. Hey, I find these kind of questions incredibly difficult to answer truthfully because I don't really know. Okay. Ideas come at me from lots of different places, and it's almost like I think there's a lot of stimuli coming from lots of different sources, and then the idea presents itself as a result of that. So I really wanted to write a book about a woman who was addicted to true crime podcasts and totally committed to her career, but didn't believe in love. And so she goes to the city of love, and then everything unfolds. I really like that juxtaposition. You know, I felt like having her super jaded and not believing in love in any other city would still have worked, but it wouldn't have worked it wouldn't have had the poetry to it. Well, not for me. So.
Absolutely. And what drew you to writing crime thrillers?
I think it's because I like them myself. Like my books are not straight crime thrillers. There's definitely a little bit of contemporary novel in there. So I tend to write stories that I enjoy reading myself. So I love psychological thrillers because I love piecing together the threads and trying to feel for myself where those books might be going and where the story might be heading. So then I try to do that for my readers, really.
Oh, I think you definitely have, because I find that in many thrillers, I tend to pick the offender or the villain really, really early. But I've got to say, I felt like I was actually standing right next to Harper when she picked this one and when I picked it, and I went, oh my God. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm literally standing in the room with her, realizing what's going on as soon as that realization happens for her. Right. Now, what makes a good plot? How on earth were you able to write this book in such a way that you didn't give anything away too early?
Well, there were rewrites where where if anything was too much of a red flag, I got rid of it, or I altered it so it could be read in multiple ways. That was one way. Another thing is, like, I do think there is part of the creative process that is incredibly messy and elusive and almost magic. Like you have all these elements and you're putting them together, and then they slot together almost like your subconscious has been doing it constantly in the background, and then you have a plot that works. But my plots, when I first make them, are not necessarily the same plot that I end up going with once I've been doing it for a couple of months, because I tend to learn a lot as I'm writing, and then I will use whatever I've learned and integrate it into the plot to make it more surprising and more interesting for me, you know. But I always go in with a plot. I have a very clear understanding of what I'm planning and where things are going to happen. It's just that plot tends to evolve and change as I go.
So would you say, with that in mind, that you were definitely more of a pantser rather than a plotter? Or like, how much of a plot do you have to begin with?
I have an extensive plot to start with, right? But then within that extensive plot, for example, I will think I know how everything's going to unravel. It's just that I tend to be wrong. So there will be major aspects of that initial plot that will stay static. So there'll be something that happens here and here and here, and those things will happen the whole way through. But how you get from that point to that point will often go very differently than how I expected it to go. And so I think that there's room for both. Well, for me, there is. I need to have an idea of very definite loose plot points so I know where I'm headed. But when I'm actually writing to get there, I need to allow myself a little bit of leeway so that so that the characters can do something surprising, and then that can tell me something that I hadn't thought of, you know. Otherwise, if I grip too hard and try to force it to go the way that I planned it, often you miss out on some of the best moments and the best realizations about a character, which then will make you change something. And that thing you change is so much better than something that you thought of before you even began, you know. So it's both. I can't really say I'm either. I certainly don't sit down and start just write a sentence and see where it takes me. But I also don't have like a long spreadsheet knowing that this happens, then this happens, and this happens, and this is how that happens, and this is how that happens. There's more like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the space between them can be filled with pantsing. Does that make sense?
I feel like that's almost a healthy approach.
Yeah, well, it's the only one that I can do. Like, I've tried to do it both the other ways and nothing good has happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I can tell you, I'm currently doing it as a pantser.
Yeah.
Nothing good is coming from it.
Yeah, I've done that before though. And I remember like ages ago, like before I wrote The Sunday Girl, I tried to write a novel. And I think I got 20,000 words in, and she was like running through a field. And I'm thinking, I don't know why you're running through a field. I don't love that you're running through a field, and I'm stuck now. So after that, when I wrote The Sunday Girl, I was very clear about having definite plot points. But I really do think there's magic that happens when you let your creative mind take over, which is why I'm not too controlling of each scene. And often, like, I'll write a scene over and over again because I'm not really sure what needs to happen here, but I know that eventually I'm getting to this point, and so I need to keep doing it to so that the right thing happens, so that I can keep going in the right direction. But often the discarded scenes will tell me a lot about the character or their backstory, or give me ideas for something that happens in another part of the book. So it's not actually lost writing, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Do you, when you are developing your characters, do you spend time really learning those characters and developing them before you sit down and write, or are they evolving at the same time?
I generally start with a feeling for who they are and some general stuff about what I believe that they believe in and what they want and how they feel about things. But a lot of what I learn about the character, I learn as a result of just writing the scenes, and then I'm learning about them through that, you know. Or I'll learn about it because I'll come to a plot point and I'll need to make something happen, and I'll think, but why would she do that? And then I'll learn because I'll write something as to why she needed to do that. And then that will teach. And it's always truthful because you go, well, that is exactly why she needed to do that. You know, like it's really, I find it's when it's working, it's phenomenal. It's my favorite thing in the world. When it's not working, less favorite.
Yeah, I can understand that. Now tell me, what is your research process like? Did you go to Paris? Like how?
Yeah, I'm very.
Tell me about that.
It was great. Like, I am very much, I'm very hands-on with my research. I need to know the place that I'm writing about quite well. So, for example, with the Paris affair, I set it in a part of Paris that I happen to know quite well because I've stayed there. In the past, I've been there for a few months at a time. And with this specific book, I was living in Harper's apartment for almost 3 months. So I knew her apartment, I knew the problems with it, I knew the staircase, I knew how she got to work, I knew the metro, I knew all the little areas around the art gallery that Noah has his exhibition in. I knew it all so well that when I actually came to try to figure out plot issues, I could immediately base it in reality. So then it was easier to figure out what had actually happened and why. Whereas I think if there are too many options, because you don't have a real sense of place, it can be quite difficult because there are too many options for how it could have gone, right? So yeah, I lived in Paris for almost 3 months. And actually, if anyone's interested, I have a lot of my research videos and photography is up on Harper's Instagram account called new.girl in Paris. So that's exactly the same Instagram account as is in the book. So we have her apartment and very loose photographs that pertain to the plot, but I've been really careful not to spoil anything. So it's very vague, but if you read it, it'll make sense to you.
I did love that because when I was reading the book and the Instagram account is mentioned, I was like, I wonder if Pip's created an Instagram account for this. And I was so excited when you had. I think it's just that extra, the public relations practitioner in me was so excited.
Well, I just found it fun. Like, I was like, oh my God, that's so fun. Because then it makes her really real as well, because she has an Instagram account. She actually exists. So yeah.
Now, what I'm actually really curious about as part of your research process,
Yeah.
did you actually learn how to pick locks via YouTube?
Yeah.
Is it really that easy?
Yeah, it is. Like,
that's actually insane.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I think, you know, you'd have to practice quite a lot, but it is completely available via YouTube, and everything I needed her to do is accessible via YouTube. You can find someone who will teach you to do it. In fact, you can find multiple people, and they actually, a couple of them have slightly different methods for doing it. So I had to choose the method that I found best, because there are a couple of different ways of doing it. It was interesting. I mean, I don't know that I would have the steady hand that Harper has in stressful situations, but you know,
just write yourself one, it'll be fine.
But it was great being her. So yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I also loved that as a part of this book, your receptionist at the Paris Observer, where Harper works, Judy, was actually named after Judy Lamb, and Judy actually bid for a character to be named after her in your book as part of the fundraiser for Authors for Fireys.
Yes.
So what was it like to be able to contribute to the fundraiser in this way?
Oh, it was amazing. It was, I was like so blown away when she bid it so much, because I actually can't remember how much it was, but it was a lot of money. I think it was like $800, $900 or something, which to me seemed quite a lot for having your name in a book, right?
Totally worth it. Totally worth it.
Like, and I got into it quite late, and she bid so quickly, and yeah, and as you'll notice, she's like literally one of the only people, aside from like her best friend and her mother, who Harper really likes. Like, Harper really likes Judy. She's really nice to Judy, and she loves Judy, because I was like, no, I have to give her a cool, nice character. So yeah.
Definitely. Now, The Strangers We Know, your second book, is actually being developed for television.
Yes.
What is it like to have your book picked up in such a way, and what's the process been like?
It's super exciting. A lot of the stuff that's happening is all behind the scenes, and I don't really know that much. I hear about things when they happen, but I'm not allowed to say too much about it, if I'm honest. It's all very secret squirrel. But it's hugely exciting, and I think it'll make a fantastic TV show. I mean, it's based around a Netflix series. Like, you know, it's written as a Netflix series. So it's cool. Hugely suited to it, and hopefully the other two books are picked up as well. And so I feel like Harper Brown would be an amazing TV character, right?
I can totally see her on Netflix. That would be a good Netflix series for anyone listening who might be involved in a production company.
Yeah,
it would be amazing.
Yeah. So I think, like, I do know that that's like on the cards, but I'm not sure where it is with submissions and stuff. So we will see, but it's hugely exciting. It's everything I want, really. So
yeah. I don't think you could ask for much more, other than maybe a major motion picture. That's probably,
let's
maybe just do that instead.
I don't know though, hey, because I find that these days the movies that are actually released, with a few exceptions, like I've seen some amazing movies recently. I loved Promising Young Woman, for example. I haven't
seen it yet, but I was reading a review.
I loved it. But that was a great movie to my mind. But I find that a lot of the ones, and this is just personal opinion, I find that a lot of the movies that are released straight to cinema these days are often a bit, well, they're not the same kind of movies that would have been released to cinema 10 years ago, for example, right? They tend to be, I don't know, Avengers or something official. Or and it's just it's not something I love, but I did love Promising Young Woman. But so I think for that reason, having it as a Netflix series is amazing, or Hulu series or whatever, because then you can also have multiple seasons. And a lot of my books actually I have a ton of ideas for follow-up books. It's just that, which I'd use for, like, you know, if they needed any ideas for second seasons of things, but I haven't actually written the follow-up books for any of them yet. So you will have a big chance for it. So
now I would like to know, what are some of the surprising things you've learned while writing your novels?
Oh my gosh, what kind of surprising things though? Can we have like
I don't know. Can't you just answer it?
Yeah,
I beyond that. I just wrote the question down. Is there anything, I guess, possibly even part of your research? If we go back to, say, The Strangers We Know and online dating, or even, I don't want to give anything away. I was about to say something and I'm like, oh,
I know that you can't. You see, that's what's so hard about the Paris affair. There's so little you can say about it without ruining it for someone listening.
exactly.
So it's like, and there's so much to say about it.
And I don't even want to say why, because that will then give stuff away.
Yeah, I know. It's a real struggle.
It's so multifaceted. Okay, well, how about we go with, what was it like writing such a multifaceted book? We've got so many different characters, so many different storylines that can lead your brain in so many different directions that you're not sure what's going on, right?
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah. It was hugely rewarding when it worked, and terrifying about halfway through when I was like, am I going to be able to pull this off? It was hugely rewarding though when it all came together, and I learned a huge amount. I learn a lot writing every book because I need to research everything the character thinks. I need to research everything the character can do, the character's job if I haven't done it myself. Often I give them jobs that I've already done, so I have some insight into it. I have to learn a lot about, for example, with the Paris affair, I'm hoping this isn't going to give it away, but I mean, obviously it is a psychological thriller. I had to learn a lot about French law and the way that the police are set up there, which is complicated, and the way that things are investigated there, which is very different to other places. And also I had to learn about, for example, the relationship between the police and the media, because it's not the same. And I read so many papers on it, trying to make sure I got it right, because I was over here in COVID by the time that I was writing that part. So I couldn't just walk into a police station and say, hey, so apparently, so I was reading tons of papers on it to make sure. But for example, in Australia, if the police needed help with something, they might reach out to the public and say, if you saw so-and-so, please contact so-and-so at the police station. They don't do that there. Like there have been cases in France where, because there's such a big divide between the police and the media, they could have reached out, like the media could have reached out and potentially got clues to solve the case a lot earlier, but there is a real divide. They don't do that. So it was those sorts of bits of information were very interesting, but also I'm quite glad that I did the research, because I would have written it very differently. If, for example, if they had used the media to reach out to the public, the plot it wouldn't have changed a whole heap, but it would have changed some things. So for example, I don't want to ruin it for you guys, but I still would have got from A to B, but I would have had to do it differently. So those were the challenging aspects of writing it based there, because things are very different.
I don't think, and I think if you had have gone more into that, I don't think it would have given stuff away. So that's fine. From an independent person point of view, I think you were still right. So I am curious to know, how long in general does it take you to get your first draft down?
Okay, so they tend to take about this book took, between first sentence and publication, was I don't know, like a year and 2 months or something.
That's not bad.
A year and 3 months, it is very quick, and it's probably a tiny bit too quick, but because that includes like all the rewrites and all the time that it's with the ARC, like when you're printing ARCs, because often the pre-reading copies come out before you've even proofread it, or like gone and combed over for final little mistakes or clues you want to change or whatever. But I think so they've all been quite quick, I think. But the first part, like I will say one thing though, when I'm writing a novel, I do always find the first part takes the longest. Like I find that getting to the midway of a novel for the first draft probably takes about maybe 65, 70% of the time, because by the time I get to the middle, I know everything that's going to happen later. And I also know everyone so well that I can anticipate how they'll respond to things. So even if I change things going forward, it's not hard for me to figure out how they might behave. And I also have a very clear understanding of themes and how I want it to end and what I'm trying to say. And whereas the first part, I'm really feeling my way. Like I know what I'm doing and where I'm aiming, but I'm learning things as I go and amending. And so I do find that, and I'm also really getting to know the protagonist and what drives them and, you know, what their favorite movie is and why it is. And those sorts of little details, which don't sound that important, but they are. And so yeah, I'd say, I don't know, about a year and I don't know, for the actual first draft, maybe 7 months.
Okay. You're kind of beating my 3 years so far. So yeah.
No, but do you know what? But I think 3 years is a nice chill time though, hey? Like,
yeah,
you know, although the only thing I will say is you want to finish it. Like, because
exactly.
like sometimes I think you just need to bang through and finish it and then go and fix all the broken bits, because sometimes you just need to finish so you've got something and then you can look at it and think, okay, so let's get rid of that character and let's make something bigger happen here. Whereas until you've got the whole thing in front of you, I think it's going to be quite difficult to do that. But I'm guilty of that too. Like I hate writing bad scenes. So if I'm writing a bad scene and I know it's bad, I will just get stuck on it, when really what I need to do is just go, okay, so this is a bad scene, but what's going to happen if she's going to do this in the scene? Let's move on.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard
to
do.
Come back to that. We're just going to highlight this one. Yeah.
Really hard to do that.
Can you share your publishing story with us? We always find everyone's publishing story is so different. So how did you go from writer to published author with The Sunday Girl?
Okay, so I had written it and I'd sent it out to, and I'd had an independent editor look at it and give me some feedback on it. So then I'd done that feedback and then I sent it out to a few agents who had, bless them, come back with quite encouraging no's. So
that's good though. They came back to you.
Sometimes you get like just form letters. So I got quite a lot of encouraging no's where they would tell me why they weren't into it. And then I'd use that information and change the book. I mean, for the most part, unless I didn't agree with them, but for the most part, I did agree with them. Usually when people give me constructive criticism, and they're not being malicious, you kind of like, they're telling you the truth and then you fix it, right? And you're like, oh, thanks for pointing it out, because I totally was blind to that. So then once I had that, I posted something on Instagram saying, I'm going to wake up early and write every day this year. It was like a picture of the ocean or something, and that was early 2017. And a girl I hadn't seen for years, like I think I'd met her twice at that point, saw that I was... saw my post and said, what are you writing? So I told her and she said, can I see the first chapter? So I sent her a chapter and she said, can I pass it on to my friend who works in publishing? So she passed it on. And then the MD read the whole manuscript and said, I know you can do this, but there are problems. And then he gave me the name of a editor and I sent it to her and paid her. And she pointed out everything that was wrong with it. And there were lots of things. And so I fixed all the things. And then I sent it off again and they gave me a 2-book deal.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. And I do have them all in front of me. That was a really bad face that I just put on that's now been recorded publicly to be shared. Can I ask Pip, what has been a career highlight for you? Was it being published that first time, or is there something specific you held on to?
Look, I remember being published the first time and being absolutely blown away that it had actually worked out, because, you know, I'd taken a whole heap of risks in order to make it happen. I'd quit my job in London, which I absolutely hated and was miserable in, and come back to Australia to be a writer. And like, I was in rural Australia, just desperately trying to do this. And then it was working. And it felt like, you know, when you take a risk like that, it can go one of two ways. It can either be, oh, she was so brave, or it can be, oh, she was so stupid. And you never really know which way it's going to go, right? Until hindsight. Like if it hadn't worked out, it would be like, oh, they're there, right? Yeah. But it did. And I feel like that is often undervalued by people, the amount of kind of life force and risk it takes to actually back yourself. and throw yourself into writing something. And so I have a huge amount of respect for anyone who's trying to do something creative, because it takes risk, you know. So that was huge when that got signed, because I kind of couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it was working. And then it was huge when I heard from the agency who repped The Strangers We Know for film. They rep all of my books for film now, and I was just so blown away, because I don't know, they'd heard about me from a scout or something, and they emailed me on Instagram, and it was a very happy day when I got that email. I kind of thought it was a joke at first, but then they called me.
I probably would too through Instagram.
I was like, someone's with me. I'm sorry.
It's fine. It's like I've got this beat picture that I can edit in. It's all good.
But they managed to sell it. So like, and they're cool. That was a highlight. And I think every time I finish a book and it all comes together, and like I've created this human and this world and this story, and it actually works, that's like a high like nothing else. And that's why I think we do it, you know, because it's hard and it doesn't always work exactly like you want it to, and it takes a lot of effort and redoing. And then when it does work, it's amazing. So that's always a high.
Absolutely. Did you always want to be a writer?
I always wanted to tell stories in one format or another. So I wrote songs for a long time, and that was storytelling. I was an actress for a while, and that is storytelling. I wrote poetry. I studied creative writing and film actually at uni, and that's storytelling. So I think for me, it's always been storytelling, you know, and this is a mechanism for that, which I love. So, and also it means that I don't have to be on every day, because I find like with my personality type, being a writer really suits me, because if I'm not feeling so fab, like worst case, I need to be good for an hour, but the rest of the time I can sit there crying in front of my computer. So
Wait.
Thanks for me.
Okay, just call us, you'll be fine. Do you tend to work on one book at a time, or do you quite often have, okay, so you don't have projects?
I have to do one at a time. I've tried to do two at a time once, and it was a disaster, like an absolute disaster, because I get really into the mind of the character I'm writing. And I kind of marinate in it, you know, and really need to understand them and almost become them. I know, not in a crazy way, but in a kind of I have to take on a lot of their thought processes in order to make them true when I'm writing them, because I write first person narratives, and I couldn't do that with more than one at a time. And I don't think I'd want to. It wouldn't be as much fun. Like, it's a lot of fun, really exploring someone else's psyche.
It's a little bit scary when you think about it. Like, it could go pear-shaped. Like,
totally, I know. Be careful who I write.
I know, that's, yeah, okay.
Yeah, but then you finish and you do the next one. You know, that's the other thing. Like, it is just a case of you finish one and then you put a full stop on it. And once it's the whole thing's gone through, because there are always rewrites, it's exciting to start something new and terrifying too, you know. It's so scary, but amazing. So
absolutely. And then you end up with a wonderful book like The Paris Affair. So
I love that book, and I love Harper Brown. Like, I found her hilarious and so truthful, like refreshingly truthful, and so brave. Like, I loved her.
And as a former journalist, PR person, I could totally, like, I could see her boss. I've had her boss before, you know, and I loved the way her boss kind of mellowed over time without giving anything away to anybody else. And I liked that clearly she's in a dog-eat-dog world of journalism, and that's the environment that boss has grown up in. And I loved her boss. That was a wonderful character.
I love her. She's cool, right?
Yeah.
Stan. So that was like
everyone's had a Stan. Everyone's had a Stan. Yeah. Oh, I just want to punch him in the head.
Me too.
Oh, anyway. Everyone else will want to punch Stan in the head. It's all good. Now tell me, what is the book that you most like to recommend to people, and why?
Oh, I don't know. I don't really recommend books, to be honest, because I find it really high risk, because you just don't know what people are going to gravitate towards or like. I know how I used to find book recommendations, and that was I'd always carry whatever I was reading in my bag, and then like when I was out, I'd show it to people and I'd say, have you read this? And then they'd often say, oh yeah, but I've also read so-and-so, which you would love, or no, but I'm reading so-and-so, and this is amazing. And that was how I would get book recommendations. I'm clearly not that generous because I do not know how, I don't ever recommend books. Like I mean, if someone says, have you read so-and-so, did you love it? I'll say yes. I mean, I would never say no, to be honest, because I feel like that's an arsehole thing to do. But I would always tell them if I really loved it, you know?
Yeah. I must say, you are the second person to say that to me. And it's been someone else really recent. And they said the same thing. They said, I don't know what that person reads, so I don't know what I would want to recommend to them. So I guess I'd say, what's your favorite book? Do you have a favorite book that that sticks in your memory other than your own?
Oh, God, I don't know. I've had ones that have blown my mind. Like I loved The Green Mile. I still remember that, and it's years since I read that. Loved that book. I loved Gone Girl. I loved The Girl on the Train. I loved.
Oh yeah, Girl on the Train was amazing.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved. Let me think.
And the critics do liken your books to Girl on a Train as well.
Do you know what's really funny though? Is I hadn't read that when I wrote The Sunday Girl. Like, and then I read it afterwards and I was like, oh, I see what you mean. Because one of the editors was, and weirdly, they were in the original version of The Sunday Girl, there was some of the character names were the same as the Girl on the Train. And like, I hadn't read the freaking Girl on the Train. Okay. Yeah. So sending it out to agents saying, yeah, it's a bit like the Girl on the Train, because I'd been told it was, right. And not realizing that I had like a whole heap of character names the same. And I was like, oh my God. I think I don't know how to name someone.
Awkward.
And I learned my lesson: never say your book is like something if you haven't actually read it. And I love Caroline Kepney. I think she's amazing. I love Robin Harding. Anything she writes, I read because I find it addictive. I like anything that is super addictive. Like I'll read it. I don't like books that feel like I'm at school again and I'm being forced to. I like the ones that I literally cannot put down and that I can't wait to get back to because they're fun, you know, and they make me feel things and think things and I'm fascinated. I love anything like that, you know. Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm probably going to make some people in this audience cringe when I say that the book that did that for me, as in the one that gives me nightmares of reading in high school, is The Hobbit.
Oh my God, I haven't read that. But
either have I, to be honest. I got a couple of chapters in and I'm like, this is year 7 and this is really difficult reading. And it put me off the entire series, like all the Lord of the Rings. It put me off completely.
Yeah, but you see, that will happen. And I think anything that you're forced to read, this is the other reason why I don't like recommending books, because I really think you get drawn to reading things at different times. Like there are books which I started like one chapter, didn't get into it. And then I read it 3 years later and I'm addicted. So I think that you tend to be at different points, you know, going through different things, and then you're attracted to different books. So there's no way you can really gauge what someone else is going to be attracted to or love right now, you know?
Absolutely. And you're actually reminding me, because I cleaned out my bookcase the other day and there were a couple that I went, there's still a bookmark in that. And it's only about chapter 3, maybe chapter 4. Yeah. And it could be 10, 15 years ago that I've tried to read it. And it's making me think now that perhaps I would give that another go.
Yeah, because you might love it. It might be the most amazing book ever, but you didn't quite get it because you weren't there yet. Like, I think that's a real thing I found for myself, at least.
Absolutely. Now tell me, Pip, what is your advice to any aspiring authors who could be watching this tonight?
Don't give up, because it's so bloody hard, but it's hard for all of us. So just keep going, just keep writing, and probably try to get some kind of input and then take the input. Because I think the biggest mistake some people make is assuming that they know everything and can see everything and that their vision is the only vision. I think that the whole point of having publishers and editors is that they see the things that you don't see, and they will give you suggestions, and you don't have to take the suggestions, but often their suggestion will tell you what's not working, and then you use that to make it better. And because I'm a really big believer that you can either make it about your ego or you can make it about the work, and I make it about the work. So if somebody tells me something that's not working with it, I'm like, amazing, let's change it, let's make the book better, right? I'm not a big fan of, but I didn't think of it, so it's not good. I think that it needs to be seen as a slightly collaborative process, because it is a collaborative process, whether you admit it or not, right? So yeah.
So I think that one of the most important things I feel when I'm reading a book is to go through the acknowledgements at the back of the book.
Yeah.
Because 9 times out of 10, the editor is acknowledged, because everyone has a role.
Yeah, everyone has a role. And also, I was thinking about this recently, actually. I think it was this morning. When you are highly creative, you tend to have a bit of a messy mind. And so in order to come up with great concepts and great plot twists and clever ways of doing things that other people aren't going to immediately guess, you have to allow yourself to have that messy mind. But that's why you need an editor who then comes in and goes, fantastic, but let's just reel this little bit in and do this. So then it becomes huge. So then you bring logic into it in a new way as well, because the one thing I will say is that books have to be logical in a way that real life just isn't. Books cannot have like fate happening all the time at all, even though life kind of has, right? There can't be too much serendipity. Everything needs to follow a very logical sequence. There cannot be any scenes that have nothing happening or that there's no point to, even though in real life, lots of our days are like that, right?
Every day.
So it's important to have editors who will come in and do that.
Absolutely. Now, what do you hope that readers will take away from the Paris affair?
I love Harper Brown, and I love how she is completely unapologetic about the fact that she has basically decided not to toe the line and do what society tells her to do. She's doing things her way, and she's completely and utterly apologetic about it. So I guess I'd want them to take away the fact that as a woman, you don't need to be judged if you do things differently. I think that as women, there's a lot more pressure on us to toe the line. And if we're not doing exactly as we're told we're supposed to be doing, we're told that we best be very sorry about it. Issue lots of disclaimers. Like, if you're not going to do what we tell you, you best be very sorry. Whereas Harper's not like that. And I love that about her. I know that when I was writing her, I knew that it would be confronting for the odd woman, but mainly women have really appreciated that and written to me to tell me how much they loved it. So that would be it, really, that you can do whatever the hell you want. As long as you're not harming anyone, you don't have to toe the line, and you don't have to say sorry about doing it your way.
Exactly. And I must say, I felt like I could really relate to Harper.
Yeah, me too.
I loved, we'll have a bit of girl talk for a little bit. But I loved the fact that she would get to a point, and this isn't giving anything away, it's very early in the story, but she would get to a point, she'd be like, oh, they're getting attached. And she goes through this sequence of how she makes them think it's their idea for this to be over. Like, I took so much from your novel.
That's a safe way to do it, though, isn't it? Like, you don't want to upset a guy, because like they get mean when they're upset, some of them, right? So you be like, this is totally your idea. Like, but it speaks a lot to like the society we live in, that you can't afford to just be totally open, because if they get cross with you, who knows how that goes, right?
Oh, we've been there.
It speaks to the fact that like women have to kind of think of it this way, like be like, I'm just going to plant the seed in your head that we don't want to do this anymore. Yeah, it's really interesting. I loved it.
I love it. I absolutely love the character. I would like to know, was there anyone, when you are describing Noah X and through Harper's eyes, was there anyone that you went, I'm basing him on him? Like,
not so much basing him on him, but I did meet a guy when I was in Paris, and I used him for the very first little kernel of Noah. It definitely wasn't based on him, but it was the first kernel of visuals. And then I amended it to be
more attractive,
probably more my type, to be honest. But in general, when I'm creating a male character, if I want there to be chemistry between the protagonist and the male character, I'll be thinking about my own reactions to someone. And then I'll be thinking what they need to be like in order to elicit that reaction in me, right? And then I'll make them do that. That's how I kind of create them. It's because I'm writing from Harper's perspective. So I'm creating Noah so that he is having an impact on her. Yeah.
No, I loved the Noah character. It just had so many twists to it as well that I didn't expect.
Yeah.
And yeah, in my head, I took him so many different ways and I was usually wrong.
Yeah, good.
So
we lie.
But yeah, no, at the very beginning, I was like, oh, I'd like to order me a Noah X. That would be great.
Yeah,
exactly. I'm going to swipe right on Noah X and it's a match. That would be great.
Yeah.
Now tell me, Pip, you are working on your next book. Yes. What kind of time frame are we looking at for that? Can you give us a little insight?
I'm not sure. They tend to be like a year and a couple of months. So I'm going to guess similar, but I don't have exact. So and I'm just like starting it. So I'm a couple of months in. So I'm in the messy stage where I'm kind of excited about it, but also terrified of it. So
I can understand that. Now, Pip, where can people, other than was it the Girl in Paris Instagram page or Harper's personal Instagram page?
Yeah, I'm new.girl in Paris.
New.girl in Paris. Where else can people find you online?
Pip Drysdale. So that is my Instagram. It is my my website. It is my Facebook. So yeah, Pip Drysdale. Makes it easy.
Excellent. That is easy. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Pip. It's been absolutely marvelous.
Thank you. It's been really fun.
Now, Pip's novels are available to borrow via our digital library on ebook and e-audiobook, which you can access free with your Frankston City Library's membership via our website, or you can reserve any of Pip's books for collection from our libraries, and we also have them in the large print collection. If you're not a member, you can sign up via our website and start borrowing straight away. You can also purchase The Paris Affair and all of Pip's books from Robertson's Bookshop in Frankston or via their online store. And I will pop a link with this recording when we share it on social media this week. Keep an eye on the Frankston City Library's website for the great Frank Talks we have coming up, including social researcher Hugh McKay. We've also got Meg Keneally, who's popping in for a chat about her latest release. And we have so many more wonderful authors coming up. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's Frank Talk with Pip Drysdale for Frankston City Library.